The wind knifed across the wall like a remembered wound, but Jon Snow barely felt it anymore. Night after night, years of standing vigil had worn the cold into something familiar. No friend, yet no enemy either. He paced the frosted rampart in silence, Ghost's white shape drifting beside him like a snowborn shadow. Below in the courtyard, muted lantern fire brushed stalagmites of rime that hung from the old stone as though Castle Black were some jagged throne of winter itself. Across the dark expanse of forest, Jon's gaze roamed, searching for movement that never came, wondering if the frozen pull in his chest was anticipation or dread. It had been there since the dreams began. Each night he saw a dragon, golden white, eyes lit with blue flame, soaring over snowbound fields that he knew were the north. Each dawn he awoke with the taste of iron on his tongue and the scent of smoke that was somehow cold. He had spoken of none of it. Dreams were the province of children and greenseers, not of men chosen to lead the night's watch. Yet the visions persisted, and with them, a whisper. Half hiss, half heartbeat, go south. Claim what is yours before the darkness claims all. When the summons from Dragonstone arrived, ravens from the Queen across the sea borne by Tyrion Lannister's clever words, Jon felt the whisper coil tighter, as though the parchment itself were woven with hidden threads that tugged upon him. Sam urged caution, Maester Aemon's lessons echoing in his earnest voice. But Jon could not deny the rising certainty that his path lay far from the wall. He left Castle Black under gray skies, handing command to the reliable Dolorous Edd, and rode south with Davos Seaworth at his side, and a small retinue of wildlings who had sworn to him more fiercely than any kneeling bannerman. The road bent through valleys still marked by recent war, villages half rebuilt after Bolton torches, fields thinly sprouting, hope and hardship interlaced like new stitches over old scars. At Winterfell, Sansa embraced him with a mix of relief and worry. She spoke of letters from the Vale, of cautious bannermen, of Bran's strange return and stranger words. Bran? No, the three-eyed raven now looked into Jon with pale eyes clouded by sights beyond mortal ken. Viserion waits, he murmured as they parted in the Godswood, though he does not yet know the name you will give him. Then the boy who was not a boy turned back to the heart, tree's red-leaved silence, leaving Jon with more riddles than answers. The sea voyage from White Harbor to Dragonstone was turbulent, a churning gray mirror for the storm inside Jon's thoughts. Yet on the morning they approached the island, the wind dropped. Mist clung to black stone cliffs like torn veils, and three shapes wheeled above the ancient fortress, one green as summer leaves, one black as midnight embers, and one pale gold that glimmered where stray bars of sun pierced the gloom. The sight rooted Jon to the deck. Something inside him surged, loss and longing, fear and an exultation so fierce he clenched the rail as though it might burn him. The pale dragon veered from its flight, banking low over the ship. Sailors cried out. Davos muttered every prayer he knew. Jon raised his eyes to meet those blazing, molten orbs and felt an answering spark flare in the marrow of his bones. Ice, not fire, yet kin all the same. By the time they stood before Daenerys Targaryen's stone throne, Jon's heart had steadied, but that spark remained. Their parley was guarded. Talk of White Walkers and living dead met talk of oaths and fealty. Tyrion served as bridge, Missandei as witness, and for hours words clashed like unseen swords. Yet, through every phrase Jon felt the night-born whisper, "You are closer. Claim him." They lodged Jon in a cliffside chamber overlooking the sea. Sleep eluded him. The dreams returned stronger, the dragon's breath frosting the vision, until even fire seemed rimed with hoarfrost. Near dawn he yielded to impulse, donned cloak and furs, and slipped from the keep, guided by nothing more than instinct. Beyond the battlements, the dragons roosted upon a wide shell of volcanic rock, where warm winds rose from fissures. Drogon and Rhaegal, wings half unfurled. The pale gold Viserion lay apart, restless, tail rasping across pumice, eyes flickering open as Jon approached. No guards barred the way. Who would stand between a dragon and anything it desired? Jon removed his glove and placed a bare palm against the scaled shoulder. The surface was warm. No hot. Yet a chill lanced his arm to the elbow. A shock of winter that braided itself with the heat until the two were indistinguishable. The dragon inhaled. Steam, white, luminous, rose from its nostrils and drifted like breath on a frosty morn. A tremor passed through Viserion. The eyes that had shimmered gold now flashed with threads of crystalline blue. Jon's breath clouded, though the night was not cold. In his chest, the hidden spark burst into steady flame. Still cold. Impossibly. A fire of winter. When Viserion's wing dipped in invitation, Jon swung himself up between the ridges. The dragon's hide yielded like living armor beneath his grip. For a heartbeat, they were two souls. In the next, one will. Muscles rippled, wind roared, the cliff dropped away. He rose above Dragonstone's towers, moonlit clouds swirling. Cold fire streamed from his lips in a wordless shout. Below, torches blossomed as guards cried alarm. Atop the stone steps, Daenerys herself emerged, silver hair whipping, gaze following the shining specter overhead. Her child, yet changed, bonded to the Northern King she had barely begun to trust. Viserion climbed higher until stars freckled the polished night. Jon felt the north calling, every heartbeat an echo of direwolves pacing ancient snows. Yet a tether remained, binding him to the dragon's brothers, to Daenerys, to the war that loomed beyond all thrones. They spiraled down to the beach, where surf hissed over black sand. The dragon's landing sent sprays of brine into the air that froze before hitting the ground, tinkling in shards like crushed crystal. Jon dismounted in silence. Across the strand, Daenerys approached alone, Rhaegal circling overhead in protective arcs. Her eyes shone with hurt and wonder both, but her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "He is mine, yet he has chosen you. How is that possible?" Jon's breath still smoked with icy mist. He touched his chest, feeling the thud of a heart no longer entirely mortal. "I have Targaryen blood," he said, words tasting of snowmelt and ash. "But the north runs in my veins too." Something in him answered that. Daenerys studied Viserion, noting frost rimming each exhaled plume, scales paling along the throat in patterns like frozen rivers. She touched the dragon's jaw. It rumbled, neither rejection nor full acceptance. "You have changed him," she whispered. "Or he has changed me," Jon replied. That dawn found them before the War Council, lines drawn anew. Some urged chains, seeing in Viserion's transformation an omen of betrayal. Others hailed it as a union of fire and ice destined to break the night. Tyrion's mind raced through possibilities like a tourney gambler sorting dice. Davos eyed the dragon with prayerful awe. The Maester of Dragonstone examined Jon, noting a chill in his skin even as his pulse ran hot. "A confluence of elements," he muttered, "unprecedented in any tome." Melisandre, summoned from her solitary vigil, gazed upon Jon as if witnessing prophecy made flesh. "The prince who was promised is never one alone," she said softly. While lords debated, Viserion brooded upon the eastern rampart, testing new breath upon the sea. Where flame once roiled, now a blast of crystalline vapor spewed forth, freezing waves and jagged sculptures, moments before shattering under tide. Fishermen miles away would later speak of a glass forest rising at sunrise only to vanish with the noon sun. Daenerys and Jon trained together upon a plateau above the cliffs, Rhaegal and Drogon swooping close, while Viserion matched them in daring loops, frost trailing behind his wings like ripcords of mist. The dragon's dance became a language of its own. Challenge, acceptance, allegiance. By week's end, Drogon permitted Jon's approach, though his searing glare promised pain should trust be broken. Beneath this uneasy harmony, plots stirred. Varys listened to whispers of southern lords who feared an ice-breathing dragon more than any dead horde. Cersei in King's Landing sharpened words into weapons, promising gold to any maester who might fell a beast with alchemy or prayer. In Old Town, scrolls turned that had slept since Valyria fell. legends of frostworms that haunted the Shadowlands, wings of rime, hearts of blue fire. North of the wall, the Night King watched the sky from a crumbling spire of ice. Blue eyes tracked the movements of ravens and more sinister things. A dragon wrought of cold would be coveted prize, or mortal threat. He gathered his lieutenants and sent new chill across the haunted forest. A silent summons to wights hidden in forgotten barrows, stirring the dead toward a destiny freshly altered. Weeks bled into months, as alliances were forged in the heat of shared danger. Jon rode Viserion first north to Winterfell, banking over the battlements in a display that turned hearts to wonder and terror both. The small folk knelt as snowflakes whirled off frosted wings. Arya laughed aloud for the first time in moons, while Sansa watched the dragon's transformed breath freeze a banner of House Stark into glittering crystal before gently thawing it again. In Winterfell's hall, Jon spoke the words he had long rehearsed. Heirs of the North will kneel to no southern crown, yet the living must stand as one. When the long night falls, titles will not matter. Sansa stepped forward and placed her hand atop his, on the hilt of ice-shattered sword. Reborn now, as two blades. The North remembers, she said, and the North will stand with you. They rode south again in early spring to gather grain and arms, Viserion's wings scattering clouds over the neck, his frost breath cooling humid swamps into sudden mist that left reeds silvered at dawn. High atop Moat Cailin's broken towers, Jon felt the dragon's mind brush his. A wordless tide of curiosity and wild affection, tinged with something ancient and inexorable. The soul of winter given wings. At Dragonstone, Daenerys greeted him with relief tempered by unease. Reports from scouts spoke of strange cold, sweeping through the haunted forest even as sunlight lingered longer each day. The realms of men looked upon Icefire glory and saw both salvation and ruin. She bade Jon walk with her along the glass tables of Aegon's ancient war room. They traced with fingertips the inlets and rivers of Westeros, pondering where best to show their united strength before fear festered into rebellion. Tyrion advised spectacle, a joint flight above the trident where Robert's rebellion once turned. Let lords behold Dragonfire and Dragonfrost intertwined, proof that old quarrels bowed to a greater cause. Others argued caution. A display might drive desperate foes to hurl spears before alliances crystallized. In the end, it was Viserion who chose. One night, he lifted from the rampart and soared due west. Rhaegal followed, roaring protest, while Drogon remained with Daenerys. Jon mounted hastily, sensing purpose thrumming through the bond. They crossed the narrow sea beneath moonless sky, reaching the mouth of Blackwater Bay by dawn. King's Landing woke beneath their shadows. Small folk scattered, gold cloaks rattled spears, and in the Red Keep Cersei strode onto a balcony in scarlet and gold. She looked up, lips curling as two dragons swept overhead. One exhaling white mist that glazed rooftops in brittle sheets, the other trailing green fire that dissipated harmlessly before touching stone. An omen? Neither conquest nor surrender, but warning. Jon did not land. He guided Viserion in a slow arc, allowing the dragon's ice breath to carve a glittering sigil upon the surface of the black water. A direwolf luminous under morning light, its frozen outline floating upon gentle waves. Then they wheeled north and were gone. The tales spread faster than ravens. Some swore the dragon's frost had murdered hundreds. Others claimed the wolf upon the river lingered for days, dazzling ships that passed. In truth, the spell lasted until noon, melting beneath sun's warmth. Reminder that even enchanted winter could not rule forever. Yet, fear took root. In flea-bottom mothers hushed crying babes with stories of ice demons. In the sept of Baelor, Tyrell roses withered under an inexplicable frost that bloomed along the floor overnight. Back on Dragonstone, councils grew longer, tempers shorter. Daenerys understood power must be brandished, yet she watched Viserion's chill with wary eyes. Dragons were fire made flesh. What then was a dragon that breathed winter? Jon offered only conviction. He is part of something older than Valyria, and he chose us. In the north, Bran's ravens carried darker news. The Night King gathered at least 200,000 dead at the Shivering Sea, countless more stirring north of Hardhome. Snow in summer blanketed those shores, where warm currents should have kept frost at bay. Something in Viserion's birth of ice had quickened the adversary's will. Like a predator sensing challenge, the ancient evil moved to strike. Plans shifted toward urgency. Jon proposed midnight sorties, Viserion's frost breath to carve barriers of glass across narrow passes. Rhaegal's flame to seal them, buying precious weeks. Daenerys prepared ships for refugees, stockpiled dragon glass on dances of supply lines. Tyrion orchestrated with maesters and smuggler knights alike. As summer waned, Jon took Viserion beyond the wall in daring flights, sowing frozen ridges atop canyons, burying whites beneath sudden avalanches of blue-lit ice. Yet each victory cost something. The bond drained him. Every burst of winter breath left frost, creeping along Viserion's golden scales, dulling the luster to milk white. Sam studied ancient fragments and feared a transformation incomplete. If ice consumed Viserion fully, would fire die in him, or explode outward in a final cataclysm neither man nor dragon could survive? Jon said nothing, but alone he felt the chill burrow deeper each ride, lace his veins in silent conquest. Ghost pressed against him at night, warmth leaching into skin so cold it steamed. Sometimes he woke beneath blankets rimed with frost. In early autumn the dragons reunited above Winterfell for a final council before siege. Snow fell, though the air carried summer's faint breath. As they landed, Jon staggered. Viserion's exhale froze battlements into fleeting crystal walls. Gendry reached to steady Jon and drew back, fingers numbed where they touched his arm. Bran watched with solemn detachment. Two rivers converge, he murmured. When their waters mix, they form a third, new and perilous. The course of the river will decide the fate of the land. Sansa's eyes shone in torchlight as she spoke quietly to Jon. "Do not lose yourself in saving us," she said. He smiled, the worn smile of a brother who bore burdens too heavy to share. "I have already been lost," he replied, "and found again by this duty." The Night King marched south with winter's heart in silent ranks. Fires guttered before his vanguard, yet above the wall the aurora shimmered, green and violet streams lighting endless night. Jon and Daenerys took wing together, Viserion and Drogon leading, Rhaegal guarding the flank. From afar it looked as though comet shards arced across the sky. One of burning crimson, one of golden frost, one of verdant flame. They clashed at the fist of the first men, where stones still bore the gouges of old battles. Rhaegal's fire met a storm of shards from a spear of ice thrown by the Night King. Drogon's talons raked through swirling snow to rend whites in smoking heaps. Viserion's frost breath swept 100 dead into shining statues that burst under Drogon's subsequent heat, showering the battlefield with sparkling dust. Yet with every chilling gust, Viserion's scales whitened further, eyes deepening to cobalt, until the dragon's own roars sounded like cracking glaciers. Jon's skin filmed with crystalline patterns despite the dragonhide gloves he wore. He fought on, Longclaw a blur of Valyrian steel cleaving silent foes. But each swing felt as though underwater, strength leached by some unseen tide. Daenerys noticed. She wheeled Drogon toward him, flame carving a path, and screamed into the howling wind, "Fall back!" But destiny is a river not easily dammed. Through the blizzard came the Night King, astride an enormous white bear cracking with blue lightning, spear of true ice glinting. He hurled it not at Drogon this time, but at Jon. The spear sliced the air, too swift, too sudden. Jon raised his sword, yet knew it futile. Then Viserion moved, wing intercepting the deadly shard. Ice met scale. The point shattered. A resonant cry like the splintering of worlds reverberated as the impact rippled through dragon and rider alike. Jon felt searing cold flare into blinding light. The world inverted. Fire inside ice, ice inside fire, the two spiraling into something vast and terrible and wondrous. When vision cleared, he found himself falling through weightless snow, Viserion plummeting beneath him, wings limp, scales flickering between gold and white. Time slowed. He remembered Maester Luwin's tales of the Dawn Age, of dragons born from the world's heartbeat before fire and ice were distinct. He felt that origin now, an echo older than mountains, resonating in his spine, whispering of choice. White fire gathered in his throat. Frost steamed from every pore. As ground rushed up, Jon plunged Longclaw into the air as though carving a path for fate, shouting a wordless cry that was part dragon, part man. Viserion's wings snapped open. The plummet changed to a soaring climb so abrupt Jon's vision bled white. They rose higher than ever before, above the storm, into a vault of stars where silence reigned. Viserion's scales lit from within, vines of molten gold traced by threads of living ice. The dragon remade in perfect balance, firebound heart beating within an icy breast, eyes twin suns rimmed in frost. Jon's own heart mirrored that rhythm, every pulse forging a bridge between heat and cold. Below, the Night King gazed upward. Expression unreadable, yet something like recognition flickered across that ancient corpse-pale face. He raised both arms, summoning every shard of winter to spear the heavens. 1,000 lances of ice tore skyward. Viserion opened his jaws. What spilled forth was not merely frost, but a beam of shimmering light. White at its core, haloed in blue and gold, searing through the blizzard in a roar of primal energy. It met the onrush of icy spears and unmade them, vaporizing shards to diamond mist. The blast hammered the Night King's ranks, freezing rows of white solid, then shattering them as sonic thunder ripped outward. Yet for every foe destroyed more pressed forward. The battle raged into dusk, the living clinging to hope forged by dragon and monarch alike, retreating in measured steps to hold a line that could not be yielded. Jon guided Viserion in sweeping passes, slicing wide arcs of frost that Daenerys laced with columns of fire, forging banks of molten glass that slowed the dead. When night fell, both armies withdrew, the living to lit encampments at the last river, the dead into the blackened woods, their pale eyes embers in the dark. Snow drifted red where corpses of men and whites alike mingled. So many had perished that the land itself seemed to mourn beneath silent starlight. Jon knelt beside Viserion as healers applied salves of obsidian ground to powder and oil of pine. Ancient remedies whispered to soothe dragonhide scalded by unnatural cold. The dragon's breath steamed, but now flames danced within each exhale. Blue and yellow warring before intertwining, harmony within conflict. In a quiet moment before dawn, Jon found Daenerys at the fire's edge, face stark with fatigue yet eyes ablaze. "We bought time," she said. "But time is not victory." Jon touched the pommel of Longclaw. "There is more to come. I feel it in my blood, as though a door has opened and what lies beyond waits for us to step through." She reached, took his hand, and did not flinch at the coldness of his skin. "We will step through together," she promised. The vow hung between them like gossamer, fragile yet unbreakable. As sun's first rays limned the horizon, it struck Viserion's wings where frost and fire mingled. Light refracted into a corona of colors unseen by mortal eyes, a herald of something new awakening in the world. Men looked on in awe, believing they witnessed magic. Yet what they saw was truth laid bare, that in the heart of winter burned a spark of summer, and in the fiercest flame slept a seed of ice. So the story turned, paths diverged, and the river of fate quickened its pace, bearing Jon Snow and his ice-breath dragon toward destinies neither prophecy nor nightmare had yet conceived. And across haunted forests and shadowed seas, forces long dormant stirred, sensing that the world itself had begun to change its very nature of fire and of frost. Oh, K. The camp at the last river held its breath beneath a sky painted the trembling gray-pink of false dawn. Smoke from cook fires mingled with a scent stranger still. The faint metallic tang of shattered ice and dragon flame fused into glass. Jon drifted through the hush like a revenant woven of cold and purpose, nodding to sentries whose eyes clung to him with a mingled awe and unease he scarcely felt anymore. Snowflakes whispered around his boots, though none fell from the clouds above. They spun from the faint chill that bled continuously from his skin, each one forming and melting in the same heartbeat. Near the command pavilion, he paused to watch Gilly and little Sam share porridge beside a low brazier. The boy laughed at the sparks ghosting upward and clapped mittened hands. In that moment Joan's heart tightened, reminded that battles were fought for more than prophecies and banners. Gilly glanced up and offered a shy, tremulous smile. He returned it, but when the child reached out, as children do, drawn to stories of heroes and dragons, John stepped back. Frost haloed the edge of his cloak where it brushed the boy's sleeve, leaving a trace of horror on wool. Gilly kissed Sam's head and gathered him close, the smile never faltering but her gaze clouding with quiet worry. John's throat worked. He murmured an apology and strode on, cursing the distance the gift, or curse, had cast between him and simple warmth. Inside the pavilion, a clutch of maps lay under stones of dragon glass that glimmered purple in lantern light. Daenerys bent over them, silver gold hair unbound and slightly singed at the ends, a testament to recent fury. Tyrion lounged near a piled wineskin, quill flicking restless patterns in the air. Davos stood watchful, arms folded, while Grey Worm traced potential barricade lines with a soldier's spare precision. Jon entered without flourish, but heads turned all the same. Daenerys straightened. The little flame that perpetually danced behind her violet eyes brightened when she saw him. Then her gaze flicked to the frost of his collar and dimmed to tempered steel. "How fares Viserion?" she asked. "He rests," Jon answered, voice rough. The wound did not pierce scale, but the chill cut deep. "He will fly again when the sun sets." "And you?" Davos said. "You look like a man who slept on a snowbank, lad." "I am well enough," Jon lied, ignoring the way a film of white had begun to creep across the backs of his knuckles. "What news?" Tyrion cleared his throat, eyes narrowing at Jon's hands before schooling into blank politeness. "Ravens from White Harbor reached us an hour past. Lord Wyman reports skirmishes near Widow's Watch, dead men advancing through the Barrowlands. Many bore sigils of houses lost in ages long gone. He asks for wildfire and dragonfire both, if we can spare them." Grey Worm tapped the map. "If the enemy surrounds the coast, they may force us inland, away from the ships. Supplies thin faster." Daenerys' fingertip traced a hull-shaped icon along the Bay of Seals. "We must hold the ports. If passage to Dragonstone is cut, the South will never send bread nor men." Tyrion's quill twitched. "And Cersei will toast our starvation." Jon exhaled, misting the lamplight. "Then we divide our strength. Rhaegal and a third of the Unsullied must relieve White Harbor. I'll ride Viserion east of the Barrowlands and carve trenches of ice behind their lines, pin them against the coast. On the ground, dragonglass caltrops here, here, and here." He pointed to narrow valleys feeding toward the port. "When you arrive with Drogon, we bake the entire field." Daenerys regarded him steadily. "You speak as though it were simple." "Nothing about it is simple," he said, softer. "But it can be done." Tyrion sipped wine, weighing the plan. "The maneuver depends on timing," he said at last. "If Cersei strikes while we disperse..." Jon cut him with a curt shake of the head. "Cersei hoards her swords, waiting for our ruin to cost her nothing. She will strike only when she senses victory, not when we bleed, but still breathe flame." Davos grunted approval. "The boy's not wrong. A Lannister's patience can be long when another pays the butcher's bill." Silence fell. Somewhere beyond the tent fabric, a horn sounded 3 somber notes. The day's first tally for the dead moved to pyres. Jon felt the cold inside him stir like a restless beast. "We waste daylight," he said. Yet Daenerys' hand shot out, catching his wrist with surprising strength. Tiny crystals glittered where their skin brushed. She ignored them. "Rest first," she commanded. "An hour. Eat. You push yourself beyond reason." "There is no reason in waiting while the dead march," Jon said. But the plea in her eyes unraveled his protest. He inclined his head. "An hour then." The hour stretched into 2. Jon forced down broth gone lukewarm, met with commanders to settle rations, then strode toward Bran's tent at the encampment's edge. The guards there, Walken, once of Winterfell, and a grizzled freefolk spearwife named Tala, stepped aside with silent nods. Within, shadows clung to every corner despite a brazier blazing near the raven perch. Bran sat beneath shaggy black feathers, skin pale as parchment. His eyes gleamed unnaturally, seeing both present and beyond. A single raven, no, a crow, ghostly white, crouched upon the back of his chair, preening. Jon knelt. "Brother," he said, though the word felt fragile, like something lost to a lifetime now, regained only by ritual. "I saw you above the clouds," Bran murmured. His voice, always distant since the cave, now thrummed with an echo as if leagues away. Viserion's breath left a scar across the winter wind that will not fade soon. Jon stiffened. "Is it enough?" "In one future," Bran said, "it buys time. In another, it shatters the world." "Then the many shatter." "Not helpful." "I do not offer comfort," Bran replied, blinking slowly. "Only what is." Jon bit down frustration. "Tell me what you see." "We ride at dusk. We need certainty." Bran's pupils widened, swallowing all brown until they were ancient and black. "Certainty is the dream of children. Listen. The Night King hunts light and shadow both. He knows fire can end him. Ice reborn in fire frightens him more. Viserion." "You," Bran corrected. "And the dragon who mirrors you. He seeks to sever the bond, to unmake what was never meant to be." "And?" Jon's chest chilled deeper. "How?" "A trap," Bran whispered. "Blue mirrors will shine at the world's edge. If you see them, turn aside. Else flame will freeze and ice will burn, and the royal road will run red with sorrow." Jon rubbed his temple, cryptic as ever. Bran's gaze softened a degree, a brother's echo through the inhuman calm. "Hold the river in balance, Jon. Do not drown in either current." Before Jon could press further, Bran shuddered. The raven beat wings, and a cacophony of caws erupted overhead. The tent seemed to breathe with moving shadows. Jon rose, unsettled. Outside, Ghost awaited, hackles silvered with rime. Jon laid a hand between the direwolf's ears. Warmth pulsed back, the only steady hearth he had left. "Guard him," Jon whispered. Ghost chuffed and settled by the entrance. Dragonfire turned dusk into molten horizon as Daenerys and Drogon launched eastward, followed moments later by Rhaegal bearing Grey Worm and a cadre of unsullied archers strapped behind the saddle. Jon watched them diminish to specks before he strode to Viserion. The dragon knelt, wings mantled in a cascade of hoarfrost that cracked and reformed with every breath. Scales shot through with veins of amber glow. He placed a hand upon the broad skull. "Time to fly." Viserion rose with a creak like glaciers calving. Soldiers scrambled clear. Jon vaulted to the ridge. The gust at takeoff froze mud to slick glass and flung banners snapping. They climbed above thin clouds until campfires below resembled scattered, dying embers. Ahead stretched a corridor of twilight. Eastward, shadows clustered over hills where the Barrowlands awaited. Jon leaned low, wordlessly steering, the bond singing beneath his ribs like harp strings plucked by unseen hands. They passed over White Knife's icy ribbon, where black ships of Braavosi cell sails hugged the coast, contracted to ferry refugees. Lanterns aboard flickered as Viserion's shadow eclipsed them. Panic shapes pointing skywards, prayers lost in wind. Soon the land below grew tumultuous with ancient barrows, grassy mounds pocked by snow and ringed with standing stones. Fires dotted among them. Still, steady, too regular for human hands. Jon narrowed his eyes and urged Viserion lower. The fires were corpse lights, hundreds of them, blue and unnatural, illuminating field upon field of dead pulled from their grave hills. Iron-rusted helms, tattered cloaks, bearing sigils of forgotten petty kings. House Flint of the Mountains, House Frost, clans lost to lore. They milled in silence until a horn of ice howled from somewhere beyond sight. Instantly, they began to move south, toward the White Harbor Road. Jon banked. A sound like thunder boomed as Viserion exhaled a sweeping arc of frost. The front ranks crystallized, frozen mid-stride. Dozens, then hundreds, encased in translucent shells. Viserion circled, breath-carving trench after trench, stacking walls of rime 10 feet high. Jon marked valleys and choke points, instructing with the voice of will alone. There, and there. Viserion obeyed. When the reservoirs of cold within the dragon ebbed, he ascended, banking north to let chill replenish. Jon gazed over their work. A labyrinth of glittering channels, like veins carved in moonstone, hemming the dead. But even as he watched, more whites flooded toward the outer layers, climbing upon frozen comrades, clawing over with mindless resolve. The maze would slow them, not stop them. Night had come full by the time Jon felt warmth surge anew in Viserion's icy furnace. He descended to repeat the weaving pattern, yet something tightened at the edge of his awareness. A distant note of wrongness. He scanned the darkness, and there, upon a far hill's crest, 3 figures stood like iron statues. They were tall, armored in black ice, eyes blazing cerulean. One raised a hand. Mirrors, Bran had said. Blue mirrors. Atop spears of ice they bore shields, polished until the moonlight revealed Jon's own silhouette, refracted 100-fold. The moment his gaze met those reflections, a bolt of searing nausea stabbed his head. Viserion shrieked and pitched. Jon clung, blood pounding. Visions erupted, himself falling amid a blizzard of shards, Viserion crashing through a city of frosted stone, Drogon's roar breaking into silence as red wings turned to crimson ice. The present dissolved in a whirl of futures, each darker than the last. Instinct screamed. Flee! Jon yanked the bond, forcing Viserion into a climb so steep his ribs compressed against the saddle. A second later, lances of sky cold speared the air where he had been, a chorus of crystalline javelins, bursting into clouds of razored hail that hissed past. One clipped the trailing edge of Viserion's wing, coating a span of membrane in sudden frost. The dragon staggered, regained altitude, and streaked west, away from the Barrowlands, away from the lure. Behind him, Jon sensed the 3 others watching. Not pursuing, waiting. A trap indeed. If he'd attacked them, perhaps the mirrors would have twisted Viserion's frost upon himself. He swallowed the thought and concentrated on escape. Exhaustion gnawed. Every tendon ached with cold, deeper than winter storms. Viserion banked over the midnight ridge, breath pluming white, now edged with faint sparks of gold again. The icefire equilibrium slowly reasserting. Jon guided toward a wide clearing where Grey Worm's campfires burned. They landed amid a flurry of torchlight, unsullied rushing to secure the perimeter. Grey Worm barked orders in Astapori Giscari, archers knocking dragon glass-tipped arrows toward the tree line. "You are early," he observed, helm under arm. "Trouble. The dead muster in greater number than we feared," Jon said, sliding from the saddle. He glanced at Viserion's wing, still patched with frost. "And they have generals who wield mirrors, ice polished like obsidian. One glance nearly felled us." Grey Worm's expression tightened. "What is the counter? Blind the mirrors with flame, perhaps, or break them at distance." Jon pressed a palm to Viserion's flank, feeling the beast draw deeper drafts of night air. "For now we do not give them a second chance." He spent the remainder of night sleepless, pacing the perimeter while unsullied lines shifted into fresh formations. He overheard Grey Worm instructing archers to aim for shield-bearers first at dawn. The plan he and Daenerys forged relied on pinning the dead long enough for Drogon's inferno to sweep, but Jon now feared those mirrors might twist flame too. Just before sunrise, a horn sounded thrice. A signal from lookouts west. Jon hurried to the ridge. In the valley below moved distinct figures, armored men, not whites, banners snapping azure in salty breeze. House Manderley, arriving at last. Their column wound uphill, flanked by archers under myrtle-green pennants of House Glover. Mercy glimmered. Allies had answered. Lord Wyman himself rode at the vanguard, broad shoulders straining wool surcoat. His cheeks had thinned since Jon last saw him, but his voice remained rich as butter. "Lord Snow? King? I confess titles confuse me in days such as these." He dismounted awkwardly and clasped Jon's hand. "You've grown colder than the wall in midwinter." "So they keep telling me," Jon replied, deflecting. Wyman's gaze lifted to Viserion, perched behind in pale majesty. A wondrous terror, that one. Folk in White Harbor whisper he stole winter from the sky. The Lord's eyes returned to Jon's blackened fingertips. "Did winter bargain fairly, I wonder?" "Ask me after we survive," Jon said. "Your forces, are they prepared to burn what the dragon freezes?" "They are." Wyman gestured. Carts laden with barrels of whale oil and ox fat lumbered forward. "Our own wildfire of sorts. The harbor is emptied of fishers. We scraped every cask we could find. We will torch whatever you trap." "Then some." Jon exhaled, a plume of mist. "Then we hold here till Rhaegal joins. When Drogon arrives, we strike." Clouds bruised purple as morning grew. A hush lay upon men who knew battle skirts the hour before dawn. Jon walked the lines, pausing here to adjust a strap, there to commend a youth whose spear shook with fear. Words came colder than intended but steady. He saw shoulders square, jaws set. That was enough. As the first sunray kissed treetops, distant horns wailed again, this time in chilling chorus. The ground trembled. From the northern tree line spilled the dead host, wave upon wave, silent, but for the crunch of ice under 100,000 boots. Jon's stomach clenched. Mirror-bearers strode ahead, shields angled to catch the dawn, casting beams that refracted across the field in roving shards of sapphire light. Where those shards passed, frost bloomed across grass. Jon vaulted into saddle. He raised his sword toward Grey Worm, who answered with spear tip high. Archers drew. The world held its breath. Viserion leapt, wings cracking thunder. Jon guided into a low pass along unsullied front, frost breath sluicing out to carve a curving barrier. Instantly, whites crashed against it, limbs snapping on impact. Unsullied advanced in lockstep, planting dragonglass javelins through chinks in the wall to skewer stragglers. On the far flank house, Glover's men hurled clay pots of oil. Flaming arrows followed, igniting slicks of blue-white fire that burned cold. A fusion of oil and frozen dragon breath creating flames that hissed, not roared. Whites flailed inside, trapped. Jon banked left for another sweep, eyeing the three mirror-bearers converging. Arrows whistled from unsullied bows, but shattered on invisible shields of frost. Viserion reared, unleashing a narrow beam of concentrated ice that would have sliced one in half, only to watch the mirror swivel and reflect the blast skyward. Shards rained harmless beyond. Terror pricked Jon's spine. He climbed abruptly, seeking angle to blind. Sunlight glancing along Viserion's flanks gave an idea. He tipped into a stoop, dragon angled so that his own golden ice scales blazed sunlight into the mirrors. Twin blinding flares rebounded. The first other staggered, ice helm fracturing. A volley of dragonglass bolts struck then, Grey Worm's archers having waited. The spear of black crystal pierced the other's chest. It screamed, a sound of bursting rhyme, and shattered, mirror and all. The second mirror-bearer jerked shield to cover eyes. Jon swooped, long claw raised. As dragon claws seized the figure, Jon cleaved downward, Valyrian edge meeting frozen flesh. Blue fire guttered out as the body disintegrated. The third retreated behind ranks of whites, losing line of sight. Jon let him go. Drogon's arrival roared through clouds, wings blotting half the sky. Daenerys rode the updraft, her cry lost in the thunder. She opened Drogon's maw, and the black dragon vomited a torrent of red gold flame across Jon's frost trenches. The sudden meeting of extremes birthed pillars of steam and hissing glass. Whites caught in mid-climb melted or burst, weapons warping. Where oil burned, flames rose higher, turned molten white by added heat. Grey Worm signaled advance. Unsullied columns marched between cooling walls, finishing anything that moved. Glover's men followed, hacking survivors. Wyman's fattest Northmen rolled casks downhill, igniting them into explosions of greasy flame. All morning the fight churned, yet for all the slaughter, Jon sensed only delay. The true army of the dead still loomed north. This prong merely probed. He conveyed the thought to Daenerys when they alighted for breath near noon. She nodded, eyes shadowed by more dread than victory. "We can't hold every front," she said. "We bleed our strength across a map too wide." Jon glanced toward Viserion, who rested with head low, scales alternately steaming and frosting. Fear stabbed. Each battle accelerated the transformation within dragon and rider alike. Time ebbing. In late afternoon, ravens arrived, black feathers flecked with frost. Bran's voice echoed in Jon's mind as he touched the parchment. Blue mirrors. The message warned. The Night King rides south upon a stormfire twilight. 2 days to last hearth. 1 day more to Winterfell. Daenerys read over his shoulder. Her jaw set. "Then every moment spent here is stolen from home." Jon closed his eyes. "We leave at dawn. Grey Worm will hold White Harbor with Rhaegal. Without you, Rhaegal's flame and your command will suffice. I must reach Winterfell first." The Queen studied him. "You fear Bran's mirror. I fear what it can make of me." He flexed gloved fingers, feeling bones ache with refrigerant fire. "If I succumb, Winterfell must still burn or freeze at our choosing." She placed a hand over his heart, felt the chill through leather. "We ride together," she said. "No divisions this time. If fate means to sunder us, let it try when our blades are crossed, not apart." Now, their mouths met then, in a kiss that shocked Jon with warmth he had half forgotten. Frost steamed between their lips, vanishing. For a heartbeat, there was no war, no prophecy. Only two souls clutching the brief luxury of human heat. When they parted, Daenerys' breath clouded white. Jon's came warm. Balance, Dotto. They left at sunrise. Drogon, Viserion, and a vanguard of winged shadow. Ravens warged by Bran, scouting the path. Clouds pressed low, pregnant with snow that refused yet to fall. The land below rolled by, barrow lands scarred by yesterday's flame, fields where cattle once grazed, now trampled to mud. At the last hearth, they circled ruins. The umbers keep stripped of life, dead banners draped in frost. No sign of the enemy here. They had already passed. Ghost loped beside with the vanguard on ground, a white streak among dark horses. Jon glimpsed him now and again, reassurance of something loyal and alive. By dusk Winterfell's torches came into view, winking beneath banners of Stark direwolf and Targaryen dragon entwined. Snow fell at last, light and swirling. The courtyard thrummed with frantic energy as smiths hammered dragonglass arrowheads, maesters boiled pitch, young girls twisted cloth into bandages. Sansa directed supply wagons. Arya tested the weight of freshly forged daggers. Brienne drilled ranks of raw recruits while Podrick yelled timing. War transformed everyone. Jon landed Viserion in the Godswood, where the warmth of hot springs steamed against snow. He felt a tug of nostalgia, memories of childhood laughter chasing Bran around trunks, Robb's face red with cold. Now only the heart tree remained unchanged, red leaves rustling with secrets. Bran's chair sat beneath the weirwood limbs. He turned as Jon approached, pupils vast black. "You saw the mirrors," he stated. "Yes." "Did you look within them?" Jon inhaled sharply. Briefly, visions came. "The Night King forges them from lake ice drawn beneath an eclipsed moon, polished by captive wind," Bran said. "They reflect not light alone, but destiny. He means to rewrite yours." How do we break them?" "I'm working on it," Bran said. Not the omniscient raven but the younger brother resurfacing, voice tinged with frustration. "The roots of the world run deep. Some secrets hide even from me." Jon knelt. Snow melted where his knees touched earth, only to refreeze moments later into delicate crystal patterns. "Do not risk yourself more than you must." Bran tilted his head, as if amused at the concept of risk. "I am already everywhere, Jon. The harm is in me, there is no sanctuary left to lose." Jon clasped his forearm anyway, a gesture of brotherly stubbornness. You're still here. That matters. Night settled thick. Sansa convened council in the great hall, fire roaring at both hearths. The Stark table crowded. Sir Davos, Lady Brienne, Tyrion, Sam, Gendry, Tormund, fresh from ranging. Daenerys sat near Jon. Shoulders squared, a fatigue weighed down her posture. Arya lounged in shadowed alcove, eyes bright, absorbing everything. Bran's ravens delivered word. The Night King's host would reach the King's Road by midday tomorrow. Numbers impossible to tile. Some claimed 500,000. Winterfell's defenders totaled perhaps 58,000 souls, counting every maester, every groom, every child old enough to draw bow. A silence heavy as snowdrift followed the tally. Jon broke it. Walls will slow them, not stop them. We use Viserion's frost to create a moat, a ring of ice deeper than the crypt tunnels. Then Drogon fires the trenches behind it into glass. If Bran can locate the Night King, we strike with both dragons before he can breach. No. Tyrion nodded. That fails if the mirrors reflect dragonfire onto Winterfell herself. Then we take the mirrors first, Arya said, emerging. Small units, fast. We know the woods around the Wolfswood. Get in, shatter them. Daenerys frowned. If they are guarded by others, that's why you send me, Arya replied with a ghost of a smile. I've killed one. Sansa's eyes flicked from sister to Jon. And the people in the crypts? Last time the dead rose inside. Ma'am? Gendry chimed. We've forged new gates of dragon glass lattice for each tunnel. If they break through, the shards alone should drop them. Brienne added, I'll station my knights at every entrance. Plans layered like shingles. Fallback lines inside the Great Hall. Signal beacons at each tower. Maesters assigned to burn bodies immediately behind defenders, so whites could not rise from fallen comrades. A tapestry of desperation woven tight. Amid the debate, Jon felt a tug. Viserion stirred beyond walls, anxiety rippling across the bond. He excused himself, stepping into night's brittle air. The dragon paced inside the Godswood clearing, breath frosting branches. Jon laid a hand upon the great jaw. The vision came unbidden. Moonlight glinting off polished ice, his own reflection warped, and beyond it a vast door of black winter waiting to swallow light. He forced it away. We stand tomorrow, he told the dragon softly. One day more. Viserion's eyes swirled, blue coiling around gold, signaling comprehension deeper than words. Dawn's first horn found Jon and Daenerys atop Winterfell's eastern battlements. Below, thousands labored to complete the ice moat. Viserion swept overhead, exhaling frost in long controlled breaths, the trench widening with every pass. Teams of archers followed, planting obsidian stakes along inner lip. Drogon swooped after, unleashing fire that fused outer edge into glassy barricade. Steam rose, condensing into flakes that drifted down like soot. By noon, the trench encircled Winterfell, black glass shining under weak sun. The dragons landed to rest. Jon's heart hammered overly fast. He felt tremors in his fingertips, shaking the cup of water he held. The transformation had advanced. His veins faintly glowed under pale skin, blue and amber intertwined. He pulled gloves on before anyone noticed. The dead had arrived at the hour of the wolf. Horns bellowed from sentry towers as a gray wall crested the northern rise, bodies packed so thick they resembled marching earth. Wind moaned a dirge between spires. Snow intensified, slanting sideways. The first rank surged, crashed into the moat, and screeched as frozen water gave no purchase. Bodies tumbled onto spikes or slipped into crevasse, so deep footsteps echoed twice before silence swallowed them. Jon mounted Viserion. Daenerys climbed Drogon. They rose, banking opposite directions like twin blades of shears poised to close. From the sky, Jon saw the host swirl, seeking weaknesses. Far to the rear, a knot of white riders lingered. The Night King astride a stallion of darkness, flanked by commanders bearing mirrors taller than grown men. Arya's strike team slipped from Winterfell's postern gate, shadows of gray cloaks flitting into the wood. Jon felt conflicting urges. Shield them, follow Bran's words, preserve his dragon for the final clash. Trust, he told himself. Trust or all is lost. Hours bled. Wave after wave broke upon frost and flame. Viserion's breath sculpted new spikes of ice each time wights formed bridges of corpses. Unsullied pikes thrust through chinks and winter spears. Glover's improvised scorpions tipped with dragon glass thudded from ramparts. Yet numbers devoured every gain. At dusk the first breach cracked. Wights hurled themselves in sacrificial heaps until their mass absorbed the moat's cold. 50 crossed before Drogon's fire incinerated the mound, but the line crept closer. Inside, Tyrion oversaw catapults repurposed for dragonglass canisters. Sansa managed wounded triage alongside Maester Walken. Calm though her cheeks were dotted with ash, Sam led a night's watch of scholars wielding torches and knives, his resolve hardening like the steel he once feared to lift. Jon sensed exhaustion in Viserion, a hollow in the dragon's core where too much frost had poured. He guided a descent to the courtyard, leapt off, and hurried toward Bran and the Godswood. Snow-laden branches bowed low, muffling sounds of battle. Bran sat alone, eyes rolled white. Jon knelt. Tell me you see him. Bran's mouth moved. Beyond the 5th row, near weeping willow carved in ice, he holds the storm in his hand. Mirrors ready. Jon swallowed. Arya? In place, Bran whispered. But the mirrors? There are 4 now. A pulse of dread. Jon stood. Viserion cannot outlast another volley of reflection. How do we? Bran's eyes refocused, brown irises returning. There is a pool beneath the Godswood roots, where hot spring water meets winter snow. Have Viserion drink, draw warmth inside. Fire feeds ice, ice feeds fire. Jon blinked. Will that work? It will change him again, Bran said. And you with him. But it may save all. Bah! Shouts rose beyond the wall. Rocks of ice hurled by giants smashing parapets. No time for doubt. Jon sprinted to Viserion, coaxed him toward the heart tree. The dragon hesitated, sensing sacred ground, but followed. Jon slashed vines with long claw, revealing a crevice where steam curled. Mineral-rich water pooled, rimmed with algae glowing faintly green. Viserion lowered his head, sniffed. Jon pressed a hand to warm scale along the brow. Drink, he willed. The dragon lapped once, twice, then plunged his snout. The pool churned, steam billowing in clouds that smelled of iron and salt. A rumble shook the Godswood. Viserion reared, wings snapping open, steam geysering from nostrils. Scales flashed, gold blazing bright, ice rivulets tracing new patterns that glowed azure. Heat rippled off in shimmering waves that turned snow to rain mid-fall, only to freeze again on trunks. Jon staggered. Heat and cold surged through him, sparking behind his eyes. For a moment, vision split. One world tinted blue, the other amber. When it overlapped, colors fused to white. War horns pealed urgent. Jon clambered to saddle. Viserion launched, this time leaving a contrail of steam-swirling snow crystals into dazzling spirals. They rose above Winterfell. Below, the Night King's mirrors turned skyward, catching wan moonlight. Jon inhaled. Viserion's throat pulsed once. The blast that erupted was neither frost nor flame, but incandescent mist, brilliant white with cores of gold and blue interlaced. It struck the first mirror. Instead of reflecting, the surface boiled, sagged, and exploded into slush that rained diamond sparks. Jon pivoted. A second blast shattered the next shield, shards dissolving mid-air. Mirrors 3 and 4 tried to angle away, but too late. Light ice fire consumed them. On the ground, Arya emerged from darkness like a phantom, Valyrian dagger in hand. Without the mirror's cover, the White Walkers guarding them faltered, stepping back. Too slow. She leapt, blade flashing. 2 fell before they could draw weapons. Cores of sapphire extinguished. A third turned to spear her. Gendry's hammer smashed its knee, and Arya finished the rest. The Night King watched, expression unreadable. Then he raised his arms. Across the battlefield, every fallen corpse, man, wight, direwolf, horse, lurched upright. The moat boiled with movement as icy hands clawed. In the godswood, inside the crypts, in infirmaries, the dead stirred. Jon screamed for Daenerys. Drogon swept over the walls, exhaling flame into reanimated ranks. Yet inside, Winterfell chaos erupted. Dead defenders, tearing at living. In the courtyard, Brienne beheaded a former squire still wearing Stark colors. Tears steamed on her cheeks. Jon dove into the yard, leapt from saddle. Longclaw flashed, hacking through the dead. Everywhere he turned, friends faced undead forms of comrades. Panic threatened, but Jon tamped it with cold resolve. To the heart tree, he bellowed. Defend Bran. Sansa, smeared with blood, rallied archers to rooftop positions, firing down on courtyard wights. Sam fought back-to-back with Ed, thrusting dragon-glass daggers. Tyrion, bleeding from a scalp wound, hurled oil flasks from a balcony, igniting pools of flame. Jon cut a path toward crypt entrance where screams echoed. Ghost barreled past, jaws crushing a skeletal maester. Jon followed into darkness. Stone steps descended slick with blood. Dragon-glass sconces flickered blue behind wights, skulking between tombs. He slew 3, reached a chamber where the statue of Lyanna Stark loomed. Beneath it, young girls huddled beside Gilly, clutching knives. A skeletal hand burst from the floor. Another Stark ancestor stirred. Jon swung, cleaving through brittle wrist. He kicked the skull away, then ushered children up the stairs. Stay close. Eyes up. As he guided them out, a jolt racked him. Viserion above roared agony. Jon glimpsed through dragon eyes. The Night King striding across the moat atop a bridge of bodies, hurling a spear of solid black frost straight at Viserion. Jon sprinted into daylight, heart pounding as 2 heartbeats now, his and Dragon's. The spear flew, trailing shards. Viserion banked, but long battle slowed him. The spear grazed the chest, sending splinters of black ice, spreading like spreading veins. Jon's scream tore into a roar. Power surged. The white fire within spilled from his own mouth in a gout of luminous mist that arced unbidden toward the Night King. Startled, the ancient monster raised an arm, but the beam struck, knocking him back. Armor of ice cracked, yet he did not fall. Drogon descended, Daenerys standing on the saddle, hurling a javelin of dragon glass tipped with Valyrian steel. It struck the Night King's shoulder, splintering. Pain registered in his blue stare, but still he stood. Viserion labored over the yard, bleeding streams of liquid frost. Jon vaulted to his back, ignoring searing cold where ice spread. One more pass, he breathed. Dragonheart hammered weak but obedient. They rose, climbing through swirling snow that now churned like hurricane. The Night King saw, raised another spear. This one forged of mirror shards fused to frost. He drew aim, yet from the forest edge Arya emerged again, throwing her dagger. It spun end over end, not at him, but at his raised elbow. The blade struck, glancing, but enough to jerk his aim. The spear flew wide as Viserion dove, Jon guiding into a trajectory that would skim the moat's edge. He felt temperature plummet as ice consumed dragon flesh. No more half measures. He opened the bond, gave everything. The white fire burst, core blazing like newborn star, engulfing rider and dragon alike in incandescent conflagration. They streaked over the Night King, beam focused upon him. Mirror shards around his waist ignited, melted, fused. His armor liquefied, body luminous to Stewart. For one suspended breath he stood, encased in glass that cracked from within. Then a thunderous shatter and a halo of blue flame erupted outward. Jon's vision flooded white. Silence followed. Snow drifted. Where the Night King had stood, a crater of molten glass steamed. Whites everywhere froze mid-motion, light fading from eyes. They collapsed like puppets with strings cut. Jon brought Viserion down into courtyard center. The dragon's chest poured frost-tinged steam. Jon dismounted, touching the wound. Ice webs receded where white fire still flickered. The spear shard melted away, but scales beneath remained dull, brittle. Viserion's breathing slowed. Daenerys ran across the shattered yard, ash swirling. Relief warred with grief in her face. She touched Jon's cheek. It burned warm now. His fingers glowed faintly, warmth pulsing beneath. Balance again cost unknown. Cheering rose as living grasped truth. The dead army stilled. Sansa collapsed against a rampart, tears streaking soot. Tyrion helped Davos haul wounded from pyres. Tormund roared triumph to sky. Ghost howled beside him. Bran emerged, pushed by Podrick. He looked at Jon, expression far away. The river chose a course, he whispered. Yet currents remain. His gaze flicked to Viserion. Life demands price. Jon turned. The dragon lowered head, eyes dimming, but within them twin colors still swirled. Blue, gold, interlocked. A shiver of understanding passed between them. The battle won, war not ended. Far north, glaciers cracked anew. East across seas, storms brewed where old gods slept. The world forever changed. He pressed his forehead to Viserion's. Rest, he murmured. We will soar again when dawn calls. Viserion exhaled, a gentle mist that crystallized into a flurry of tiny snowflowers, each petal edged with gold light. They drifted through air, landing upon Jon's shoulders, upon Daenerys' hair, upon the flagstones where blood and ash mingled. In the hush that followed, a single heartbeat echoed like dawn breaking across endless winter, promising that from ice and fire something new, unspoken, unwritten, would rise. In May, snow lay in hushed layers across the courtyard of Winterfell, covering the broken stones and dark patches of dried blood beneath a blanket so pristine it looked as though the ground itself sought to forget the terror of the night before. Yet memory clung to every survivor. In the uncertain light of dawn, men and women, moved with the tentative quiet of those who feared each sound, might summon horror anew. Dragon glass shards glimmered where they had shattered on white bone. Pieces were gathered by trembling hands into wicker baskets, their edges still keen enough to slice through mittened fingers. The bodies, those that could be called bodies, were heaped along the outer yard beside walls half scored by fire, half seared by lines of gleaming ice. Crows circled, unsure whether carrion brimmed with death, or with some residue of power that kept beaks at bay. Inside the great hall, Sansa stood atop a table of scarred oak, hair still plaited with streaks of ash, directing the cataloging of the lost. Her voice did not quaver, though grief etched every syllable. Names of stable boys and northern knights, of southern volunteers, of women who had defended the pantry stairs with carving knives when the crypt doors buckled. For each she paused a heartbeat, allowing the hush to swallow the name before moving to the next. Beside her, Tyrion scratched records onto vellum, mouth set grimly. Davos handed cross-check tokens, rings, torn strips of house color, half-melted belt buckles, to Gilly, who wrapped them in linen for burial markers, once the ground thawed. No one spoke of building pyres. So much ash already coated the air it felt sacrilegious to burn what little of the fallen remained. Instead, the plan was to dig graves beyond the orchard, where hot spring runoff kept soil nearly frozen, not iron solid. At the highest parapet, Jon Snow leaned against frost-coated merlons, breath curling into steam that dyed the air pearl white. His eyes roamed the horizon where the sky broke open to reveal a wash of pale blue. Dawn's weak warmth struck his cheeks, yet he barely felt it. Beneath his thick furs, a fine sheen of hoarfrost speckled the lining where his skin touched fabric, as though his pulse exhaled winter. The sensation no longer startled him. It was simply what remained after the merging of dragon and man. Heat braided with cold so tightly he suspected even maesters would not untangle it. Behind him, Viserion sprawled atop a broad stone platform hastily cleared of ballista debris. Steam rose in slow patterns from the dragon's flank, where scales glazed in swirling marbled halos of amber and pale sapphire. Maester Walken and Samwell Tarly attended the wound under a canopy rigged from sailcloth. They layered poultices of melted ice water laced with pine tar resin, and Groundmere, hoping to draw out the lingering slivers of black frost still lodged beneath scale. Each time Sam eased a shard free, blue motes bled into the air like spilt starlight. Sam swallowed fear and continued, hands steady, repeating a mantra learned from old town scrolls that promised frost was only fire slowed to crystal, and crystal could be coaxed back to flame if guided gently. Jon watched, willing strength into the dragon with every measured breath. Daenerys appeared from the stairwell wrapped in a heavy cloak the color of dusk. Her hair, once silver bright, showed new scorches, but her eyes burned undimmed. She stepped beside Jon and rested gloved fingers on his. Both felt the tentative warmth that met between. "He breathes easier," she said after studying Viserion. Jon nodded without tearing his gaze from the dragon's slow rise and fall. "Sam believes the worst has passed. The wound closes from within." She exhaled softly. "And you? Bran told me your own fever cooled in the night." "Memo." Jon flexed his hand. The skin still gleamed faintly translucent, veins of pale gold winding amid ice-blue threads, but no tremors shook his fingers. "I slept a few hours," he admitted. "Ghost curled at my feet again. Felt like when I was a boy." Memory touched his voice, then receded. "I would rest a year if the realm could spare the day." Daenerys offered half a smile. "The realm never spares a day, especially to those crowned by fire or frost." Her gaze drifted across snow-lined rooftops to the Godswood, where a column of thin smoke rose from cleansing fires. "How many did we lose?" "Half what marched," Jon answered. "Worse among the hill clans, better among unsullied. Grey Worm drilled them to step beyond fear." He paused, jaw tight. "We have lords to reassure, wounded to tend. Spies no doubt scouring the devastation for weakness. Yet I cannot leave Viserion while he heals." "I will speak to the lords," Daenerys said. "Sansa trusts me more each sunrise since the dead fell. She still questions our next move, but she sees the people look to us." She angled herself toward Jon. "What do you see?" Looking north. Jon's eyes focused on the far tree line. Snow rippled in the wind, nothing more. "Silence," he murmured. "But Bran warns me, silence is rarely empty. The Night King's destruction unseals power as easily as it destroyed it. Something rushes to claim the void. Words fit for a maester." She teased gently, then sobered. "Tyrion claims Cersei holds counsel day and night, that Qyburn toys with glass grenades and scorpion bolts tipped in obsidian powder. She may decide your frost dragon is as much a threat to her as the dead ever were." Jon sighed. She would not be wrong. Across the yard, Arya scaled a ruined siege tower with cat-like grace, stopping at a vantage near the rookery. She stood poised, arms crossed behind the hilt of needle, surveying the scene with soldier's dissolution, inventory rather than mourning. When her eyes found Jon and Daenerys, she inclined her head once. Respect or acknowledgement or complaint impossible to tell. A moment later she disappeared down the ladder, probably to challenge Brienne to another spar. The clang of steel already rose from the practice yard where recruits, drunk on relief, pressed themselves back to work. Later that morning Jon descended to strategize with the gathered bannermen. He wore no crown, but the combined sigils on the breast of his surcoat. The direwolf fused with the three-headed dragon, announced the uneasy reality many still struggled to accept. The North and the Targaryen queen stood as one. Inside the solar by the maester's turret, heat from iron braziers could not banish the chill of cracked window panes, yet conversation warmed to fervor quickly. Lord Glover, sleeve bound in fresh linen, argued Winterfell must fortify rather than march. "We've but licked the first wound," he snapped. "Who knows what plague the Night King's death sets upon us? Better to stand in stone walls until spring shows its face." Lady Mormont, pale but defiant in wolfskin cloak, declared that House Mormont fought monsters on every shore and would fight them again wherever Jon led, be it southward or east across the narrow sea, if the storms demanded. Wyman Manderley counseled caution of a different flavor. Food stores will not regrow on high honor alone. The seas freeze and thaw unpredictably. If we cannot move grain from White Harbor, we starve before Cersei lifts a single sword." Tyrion, leaning upon a crutch from a cracked kneecap, aimed his pen at parchment for each complaint, quipping that starvation lacked the charm of beheading yet killed queens just as dead. Sansa listened, chin supported on interlaced fingers. When talk turned to the dragon's wounds and their effect on future campaigns, she asked pointedly, "And is Winterfell prepared for the next frost breath?" Silence rippled. Jon met her gaze unflinchingly. "Should I sense that risk, I will fly far from any holdfast," he said. "But we must assume mastery, not dread. A sword feared by its wielder is no weapon at all." Daenerys addressed the hall. "Our plan cannot be siege alone. We stretched our strength to its limit to defeat the dead. We cannot bleed months more while Cersei hoards coin to lure the Golden Company and sell sails. We must strike before she steadies." Her words kindled murmurs and uplifted brows. "When Viserion heals, we ride south. Drogon will fly with him." She glanced to Rhaegal perched on distant rampart, already sniffing winter air. "Rhaegal remains with Grey Worm to guard the north and ferry grain from White Harbor once the ice roads are secure. Jon and I will meet our foes at Dragonstone, gather allied fleets, and press upon King's Landing." Glover looked skeptical. "And the folk of the Reach, still wary, follow a queen who breathes frost and a king who bleeds icicles?" "A queen who burned whites beside their children," Davos countered. "A king who knelt to free them from terror. They will follow." It was not unanimous agreement, but grudging consensus formed. By sessions, endriders were assigned to spread word. Harvest early, store grain in sealed stone. Send smiths south with new obsidian spearheads. Craft mirrors of bronze polished with oily pitch to meet the enemy's alchemy. The meeting dispersed into swirling snow. Outside, Arya waylaid Jon. "You plan to ride into the lion's den again?" she said. "Last time you charged into a palace, it ended with daggers in you and arrows screaming overhead." Jon's smile was wry. "You plan to sneak inside the lion's den again?" he returned, and saw her eyes flash. "I'm not leaving Winterfell undefended," she said. "I promised Sansa. But the moment Cersei's gates crack, I'll be through them before you can land. Just keep your dragon from freezing me to sculpture." Jon clasped her forearm. "Deal." The week that followed slid by in a blur of healing, forging, and messages borne on Raven's ragged wings. Viserion's wound closed into a luminous seam that pulsed faintly with each breath. Maester Walken declared the dragon flight-worthy, though advised brief patrols before any great battle. Jon and Daenerys tested those patrols each dusk. Sweeping over the King's Road where columns of refugees trudged south. Wildlings beside Northmen beside Umbers, broken but alive. Each flight left behind awestruck stares, hands raised as though to touch the contrails of glittering frost Viserion painted across the stars. Children in tattered coats cheered. One brave girl curtsied so deep her knees disappeared in snow. Jon's heart clenched at every hopeful face. On the 10th night, Bran summoned Jon alone. They met in the library among tomes, smelling of dust and pine wax. Bran's wheeled chair rested beneath a window where moonlight spilled in silver bars. "I traced ripples across the weirwood net," he began without greeting, "when your blast shattered the Night King. Shards of power splintered into time itself. Pasts shifted like ice flows." Jon tried to parse the notion, but Bran pressed on. "Everything that once was inevitable isn't any longer. And all that was impossible has grown plausible." He closed his eyes. "I saw dragons hatching in Valyria that never crumbled. I saw swords of dawn forged anew, wielded by hands unmarked by age, all because one moment of frostfire tore the loom of days." Jon looked uneasy. "Can it be mended?" "Not mended," Bran said softly, "but guided. Viserion is both song and silence. His breath can weave as easily as it unravels. You must choose each target as a weaver chooses thread." A pause. If you burn King's Landing to ash, you risk severing the tapestry beyond repair. Jon swallowed. You ask me to conquer with mercy. I ask you to wield creation, not just destruction. Bran opened his palm. A snowflake landed. Did not melt despite the library's warmth. You and Viserion can craft ice that births life as easily as snuffing it. Remember that. The following morning, ravens bearing black and red ribbons touched down. One came from Dorne, sealed in golden wax. Prince Corin Martell offered war galleys and sand cavalry should Daenerys pledge justice for Elias' memory. Another carried the Tyrell Rose. Lady Olenna's grandniece from exile in Bravos declared House Tyrell not yet extinguished and hinted that the Arbor's fleet would sail if the Queen of Ashes faced the Lions. Tyrion read each missive with raised brows and mild dread. Alliances multiplied like mice in a grain barn, each demanding promise. Daenerys signed her name in Valyrian flourish, binding them to a cause she prayed would not devour them in the end. Preparations concluded under veiled excitement and buried fear. Sansa bid Daenerys farewell beneath the portico. Winterfell stands ready, she said, voice formal. We will hold your north. Daenerys clasped her wrists. And I will return what is yours. Whole, not frozen. Sansa managed a small nod, then turned to Jon. For a heartbeat, brother and sister shared silent memories of a nursery long gone. Then she embraced him fiercely, mittens cold against his neck. When they parted, her eyes glistened, but her tone was steel. If you die again, try not to make it permanent. Arya punched his shoulder lightly, calling him big stupid hero, then strode off with Ghost at her side. Bran, perhaps mercifully, watched from a balcony rather than descend for farewells. He lifted 2 fingers in a gesture half blessing, half farewell. With Rhaegal on the rampart to salute their departure, Drogon and Viserion lifted. Snow whirled in cyclonic spirals under wingbeats. Below, banners flared. Stark gray on white, Targaryen red and black, Mormont bare, wildling runes, the sun and spear of Dorne newly unfurled. They arrowed south, shadow scaling across the landscape of half-frozen rivers and thawing moors, where early crocus speared through crust. The realm exhaled the breath it had held since the long night. Now it waited to see if summer would ever claim the sky again. They camped the first night at Moat Cailin, fortress ruins still haunted by damp mists that hid scars of previous wars. Unsullied battalions fanned torches through spine-crooked archways, posting watch along battlements too broken for arrows. Jon lingered on a toppled tower with Daenerys, studying the ghost-lit marshes. Southbound again, he murmured. Feels like lifetimes since the king in the north swore never to leave his people. You did not leave them, she countered. You carry their hopes on your shoulders, and a frosted dragon's wings. She touched the pommel of Longclaw where it leaned against stone. I will not let hope die to satisfy my vengeance. Jon's breath misted. And I will not let vengeance blind me to the innocents trapped behind Cersei's walls. He looked to Viserion asleep near the campfire, tail curled like a cat's. If Bran is right, we can craft miracle or massacre. We choose. Daenerys' gaze turned inward. My family believed dragons a right of birth, not a responsibility. I believed so once. Then I watched my child carry winter on his breath, and I understood dragons are the storm we unleash upon the world, and the shelter we offer afterward. She met his eyes. We choose, yes, but we choose together. Their lips met, gentle at first, then fierce, as though to seal pact in something older than thrones. Wind skirled through broken towers, scattering ash of dead fires into dark marsh where it settled among bulrushes. The next morning they rose before dawn and took flight again, the army marching beneath. As they neared the next southern border, scouts returned with troubling tidings. A fleet of iron-borne ships had anchored off Seaguard, black hulls emblazoned with krakens of brilliant gold. Euron Greyjoy's banners fluttered, but between masts, newcomer insignias gleamed. A lion crowned with a sunburst of shattered glass. Qyburn's genius had merged Cersei's symbol and Greyjoy's, each mast fitted with crossbows of gleaming bronze, bowstrings gleaming like woven wire. Tyrion identified them from sketches, new scorpions refined from dragonbone ballast. made lighter and faster, rumored to hurl bolts tipped in a compound of dragon glass crystal, grown onto spun glass spines. Mirrors lined the bolt shafts, tiny shards polished to diamond clarity meant to split Viserion's beam or scatter Drogon's flame. "Gods be good," Davos muttered. Cersei built her own snow of death. Jon and Daenerys debated shifting course toward Seaguard to shatter the fleet before it set sail again. But Tyrion argued delay risked giving Cersei time to fortify King's Landing with wildfire caches. "Euron is bait," he warned. "The Queen wants you to burn half your strength on an expendable kraken while she readies the lion's jaws." Daenerys clenched her jaw, torn between caution and rage. Jon resolved it. "We fly at dawn for Dragonstone. We muster allies there and strike south by land and sea together. Euron's fleet will follow. Let him chase us into the jaws of our choosing." Night made camp near the ruins of Maidstone, a hamlet burnt years ago. Wind hissed through charred beams. Jon walked alone until he found the shell of a sept cracked beneath ivy. Inside he knelt where a cracked statue of the father lay, stone hands shattered. He did not pray. He merely sat, hearing distant murmurs of soldiers polishing blades, soft snoring of freedmen who had never left their villages before now. In his mind he saw mirrors glint under torchlight, but this time each reflection shimmered not with foreboding, but with possibilities. He pictured them reforged into windows, bending sunlight into warm beams for winter crops. He imagined Viserion's frost-shaping canals to carry spring melt to drought-struck fields. He realized Bran spoke true. The breath of ice fire could kill or cultivate. A faint crunch of gravel behind signaled Tyrion. The dwarf settled beside him, offered a skin of sour Dornish red. Jon declined. Tyrion sipped before speaking. "You and the Queen risk everything when you reach King's Landing. Cersei scours the city, but there are still innocents. Children, poor folk, populating every twisting alley. She will use them as shields." Jon said nothing. Tyrion continued, voice hushed. "When Aerys threatened wildfire beneath those same streets, my brother killed him to prevent it. I wonder what blade will intervene should Cersei choose the same." His dark eyes met Jon's. "Make certain it need not be mine." Jon rose, dusting ash from knees. "It will not." Come morning, scouts reported eerie fires visible to the east, columns of waxy blue flame flaring across the Blackwater rush. Some said Cersei tested new wildfire tinted with cobalt salts. Others feared remnants of the Night King's sorcery bled from the earth. Regardless, the urgency grew palpable. They made Dragonstone by nightfall, wings beating over choppy waters that glowed with pale phosphorescence. The castle issued blazing beacons in welcome. Missandei greeted Daenerys, reporting that the narrow sea buzzed with merchant tales, dragons of ice and fire. Ports in Tyrosh turning away lion ships. Myrish sell sails defecting for fear of ghostly storms conjured by a frost breather. Inside the familiar stone hall, they convened allies. Varys emerged from shadows, his silk slippers silent. "King's Landing rots," he said after a single bow. "Small folk whisper that the Queen beds a kraken and plots to drown the city in poison fire. They paint sigils of dragons beneath shutters at night." He flicked a glance to Jon. "But they also fear winter's jaws returning with each gust of wind. Give them hope before fear devours them." Jon weighed the spider's counsel. "Hope requires mercy," he said. Varys inclined his smooth head. "And a measure of spectacle." Over the next 3 days regiments arrived. Dothraki outriders down to half their numbers yet still fierce. Dornish light cavalry led by Lady Nymea Sand, her curved scimitars flashing. Tyrell Arbor lancers under a banner of green vines. Even contingents of Free Cities crossbowmen, purchased by Braavosi bankers hedging wagers on royal futures. They pitched tents along the black sand beaches, cooking stews laced with saffron and dried date, mingling languages in campfire song. The cadence of living replaced the hush of the dead. Viserion tested new altitude daily. Each dive ended with the dragon exhaling a gout of mist that glittered in dawn sunlight. On fourth dawn, Jon guided him above Dragonmon's smoking peak. He stretched one palm into the dragon's contrail. Frost kissed his skin but melted quickly, leaving warmth beneath. Balance. A war council assembled in the map room carved by Aegon. A table shaped like Westeros. Rivers etched in obsidian. Davos placed carved pine markers for each allied host. Varys stationed tiny lead ships along the bay. Tyrion positioned lion effigies where Cersei's armies held. Daenerys traced potential flight paths. Jon examined topography surrounding the capital. The Rose Rad, the Gold Road, the Scorpion Line battlements recently built upon the city's northern face. "We must neutralize Euron's fleet first," he said. "Draw them into Blackwater Bay. Use the narrow channel to funnel them." Rhaegal sets tar-laced barges alight, driving the Krakens toward Viserion's frost. Ice will hammer hulls brittle. Drogon's flame seals the bay, with a curtain of steam and smoke. Landing parties row under cover. Storm the city from docks, while the gates are fixated on dragons overhead. "Dan?" Tyrion nodded slowly. "Clever. The fleet becomes our shield rather than theirs." But Qyburn's mirrored bolts. Bran's voice floated from doorway. They hadn't known he wheeled inside. "Aim a single breath at the sea itself," he said. All heads turned. Bran gestured to Jon. "Let Viserion freeze a stripe of water before the fleet." Mirrors don't reflect chaos. A slab of ice on water disrupts their range and angle. Bolts will ricochet wild. Jon considered. It risks stranding ships on their own ice raft. "Exactly," Bran said. Kraken in a net of glass. Proceedings ended with hearts steeled, parchment full. Daenerys lingered behind, standing where firelit shadows danced across Aegon's carved kingdom. She touched the Stormland's coastline, then the Crownlands. "My birthplace," she murmured. "I never imagined returning with ice on my breath." Jon pressed beside her. "You return with life in your hands," he said. She allowed herself a small laugh. If only dragons came with ledgers. Columns for lives saved, lives lost. Her smile faded. "Will you kill her, or shall I?" "Cersei," he said, understanding. "If she surrenders, no. If she fires wildfire beneath her own people, I'll do what must be done. But not with dragons. I'll take blade to throne room if it spares 1,000 children. I swear it." Daenerys nodded, hand squeezing his. Their fleet set sail a fortnight later, banners snapping under crisp ocean gusts. Viserion and Drogon led in crisscrossing sky arcs, dipping low to scatter curious gulls. Rhaegal spiraled behind, shepherding sails. On Jon's shoulder perched a white raven Bran had dispatched, eyes black as pitch, beak tipped crimson. "Watch carefully," Bran had said. "When you near the city walls, release him. He will find me. Through his eyes, I will guide you to Cersei's traps." Jon was unsure whether to be comforted or unnerved. Seaguard came into view at noon. Stone towers garrisoned by Greyjoy reavers. Euron had not yet weighed anchor. Bones of captured whales decorated prows, hung with lanterns shaped like shrieking faces. Daenerys signaled caution, banking Drogon high. But Euron saw dragons and loosed his war horns. Scorpions pivoted skyward, bolts gleaming. Viserion darted forward. Jon felt the dragon's heart accelerate, a primal joy in testing new strength. He directed a short burst, a spear of frost aimed at the sea. Water beneath nearest Kraken boat solidified almost instantly, surging upward into jagged icebergs that lift the hull, keeling it sideways. Scorpion bolts released, but angles misfired. One skipped across shimmering slab and shattered upon another vessel's mast. Crewmen cursed, scrambling to reload. Drogon swooped, releasing twin geysers of flame along outer perimeter, igniting tar pots stored on deck. Rhaegal's green fire bored through rigging lines. In moments, roaring flame met rising frost steam, cocooning ironborne ships in choking mist. Amid confusion, Dornish galleys surged, ramming. Unsullied crossbowmen peppered decks, shielding boarding parties who swarmed. Within an hour, Euron's once fearsome fleet burned or lay cracking under the burden of ice, sailors plunging into water gone slushy and treacherous. Jon scanned for Euron himself, spotting a plume of black and gold cloak on the aft castle of Silence. The crow's head figurehead gurgled water as Ship listed. Euron laughed, hair whipping. He turned a modified scorpion on Jon. A triple-barbed bolt hung with mirrored shards. He fired. Viserion banked. The bolt sliced past his wing, grazing membrane. A faint sizzle sounded as mirror shards refracted stray frost and flame, but the dragon steadied. Jon drew Longclaw, though useless at distance. He saw Euron grin wide and dive below deck. Ship aflame above him. A heartbeat later, Silence's storage of captured black powder exploded, blasting the stern to splinters, launching the scorpion into the sky where it spun end over end, before spearing into the sea. Euron's fate vanished in spray. Seaguard's towers surrendered by sunset, raising white sheets. Prisoners shackled. Fires quenched. Survivors offered food beneath Targaryen banners. Jon spent the night pacing ramparts, checking on Viserion's wing. A thin line of char marked the membrane, but the tissue already re-knitted in crystalline pattern. Sam examined it, eyes shining with wonder. He heals faster each time. He whispered, "The frost carries thread of growth, not just destruction." Jon nodded, remembering Bran's counsel. Ravens flew to Dragonstone, to Winterfell, to Dorne, victory at Seaguard. Yet in King's Landing, Cersei sat on the Iron Throne, wine swirling. Reports reached her ears of shattered fleet and frozen harbor. She turned to Qyburn. "Release the thorn." Qyburn's lips pursed in grim delight. Deep within dungeons under the Red Keep, he had grown a shadow of his own, a great scorpion of black steel, limbs jointed with wildfire reservoirs, tip a point of obsidian laced with basilisk blood. It required 24 men to wind the cord, but Qyburn claimed a single bolt could pierce a dragon's heart at 500 paces. Its secret was not mirror or flame, but poison. A venom distilled from manticore stingers and crushed ice spines of slain others. An equalizer, he called it. As Joan's fleet rounded Crack Claw Point, a maelstrom formed. The sky bruised purple, lightning forking downward. Bran's ravens shrieked, flapping. Jon felt a pulse through the bond with Viserion. Something old and wrong watched from within storm clouds. Daenerys pressed alongside. "Dragonstone's cliffs will shelter," she shouted over wind. They banked, leading fleet into the bay carved from Volcano's caldera. Ships moored under strained ropes. Sails furled amid crashing rain. On the island, storm surge battered stone causeways. Yet in the heart of the tempest, Jon felt not cold, but a seductive warmth. A siren hum, echoing the moment on the fist when visions flooded his mind. He steadied. Viserion roared defiance, frost breath slicing sideways, splitting the storm front momentarily. Lightning refracted in cascading prisms across the ice cloud. The storm recoiled, wound eastward. Tyrion watched from a parapet, eyes wide. You parted the sky. Morning broke calm, air smelling scrubbed. They prepared final march. Dothraki scouts thundered ahead to the Roserad, clearing supply wagons. Unsullied, Dornish, Reach levies advanced in columns. Rhaegal flew wide arcs carrying ravens to coordinate. Varys advised sending a herald to offer terms of surrender. Daenerys consented, dispatching Missandei under white flag. Jon worried Cersei would respond with arrow or some cruelty. 2 days passed. Missandei returned escorted by Lannister soldiers bearing sealed scroll. She was unharmed but shaken. The scroll contained a simple line in Myrish ink. "Bend the knee to the lion, or your frost beast devours its own leash." Below, a crude drawing of dragon impaled on spear. Tyrion recognized Qyburn's handwriting. Beneath taunt was schedule of public executions. Bulk of captured riverlords to be paraded in 3 days as bait to lure the dragon into range of justice. Daenerys' knuckles whitened. Jon felt chill bloom in his spine. Viserion stirred, reading his concern through the bond. She invites a slaughter, Daenerys said. Every hostage a shield around her scorpion. She looked to Jon. What thread do we weave? Jon breathed, remembering Bran's snowflake. We weave a river, he answered. One that washes the shield aside without drowning those behind it. That night, he guided Viserion high above the narrow sea, far from lights of camp, to practice a new discipline. Instead of wide beams of frost, he coaxed the dragon to create fine spirals, vortexes of snow that coalesced into hollow shells of ice, each shape glimmering like glass lanterns. They floated on updrafts before dissolving. He repeated the exercise, shaping paths that curved and looped until Viserion's breath danced in lace-like ribbons. It required focus. Each attempt tired dragon and rider alike. But by dawn, Viserion learned to sculpt frost as gently as flame. The march resumed. Fields once golden were now pale green under early spring. Farmers peeked from cottages, clutching children, as armies passed. Some placed baskets of eggs and herbs at roadside for foot soldiers. Jon dismounted frequently to help raise fallen fences, to speak quiet words, to reassure that the war aimed not to replace one tyranny with another. These gestures spread in whispers faster than any raven. By the time they reached the outskirts of King's Landing, small folk thronged balconies to watch approach with cautious hope. Cersei's banners snapped atop every tower. New scorpions crowned ramparts. Thick arms braced, bolts glinting. Wildfire caches rumored beneath cobbled lanes remained dormant, but windows bore shutters painted with lion's mane and words fire and glory. Propaganda of resistance. Behind walls, the execution stage rose, a platform of blackwood large enough for hundreds. Shackled hostages knelt beneath sun's glare. Atop dais, a looming weapon crouched. Qyburn's thorn, black limbs folded, bolt glistening oily green. Jon and Daenerys stood upon a low ridge north of the city, commanders arrayed behind. The air quivered with heat, though clouds drifted overhead. Anxious horses stamped. Rhaegal circled above, a watchful sentinel. A herald's horn sounded from the city. Placards lifted. A voice, amplified by some brass tube, proclaimed the queen's decree. The dragon bastard and his sorceress queen will kneel unarmed before the gate at midday or witness blood, equal to each day. They refused. Chains rattled. Hostages forced upright by halberd prods. Among them Jon recognized Lord Tarley's young squire, the Tyrell gardener boy who once trimmed roses for Marguerite, and a dozen seamstresses seized from Fleabottom. His jaw clenched. Davos whispered, "Madness déjà vu." Tyrion's face tightened. Memories of wildfire pyres flickered. Daenerys met Jon's gaze. "Do not let rage rule," she said. "We promised mercy first." Jon touched her gloved fingers. "Mercy then." They mounted. Viserion unfurled wings. Drogon thundered. Armies held position outside Scorpion range according to Tyrion's calculations. Jon signaled Bran's raven perched on his saddle. It launched skyward, banking south to hover above the city's rooftops. At midday bells tolled. Gates remained shut. On the platform, Qyburn raised a torch near a line of powder barrels. Threat clear. Cross one step, hostages burn. Cersei appeared on parapet in gown of crimson scale, crown glinting. She raised a jeweled goblet to toasting height before tossing its ruby contents into the wind. A flourish of red wine that spattered stone like blood. Then she nodded to Scorpion crews. Bolts fired. Arcs of glittering death aimed at dragons. Drogon banked aside, flame billowing to intercept. But mirrored heads deflected heat, veering aim toward Viserion. Jon urged the dragon upward, but one bolt grazed his breast, carving a scorch along newly healed seam. Viserion shrieked. Jon gritted teeth, sensing pain but not mortal. He steadied, ignoring the next barrage. He drew breath with the dragon, focusing on the shapes practiced in night sky. Instead of a gaping beam, he exhaled a thin ribbon of frost that corkscrewed downward, weaving between scorpion arms, freezing ropes and gears mid-turn. Bolts jammed. Crews cursed. Drogon swept along western battlements, flame searing but measured. He targeted only scorpions, avoiding archers cowering behind. Fires blossomed yet left stone intact. Small folk shrieked, but saw walls still standing. Hope flickered. On the platform, Qyburn dragged a lever. The thorn scorpion ratcheted, targeting Viserion. Its bolt tip glowed a sickly Viserion, dripping venomous slime that hissed on wood. Jon felt icy dread. He directed Viserion into a sharp dive, not toward Qyburn but toward the air above hostages. At 10 yards altitude the dragon banked, exhaling a fan of frosted mist shaped by practice control. An arching dome that settled around prisoners like translucent shield. Chains, podium, and guard boots froze to the wood, locking movement. Frost traced up halberd shafts. Metal brittle, snapped under weight. Hostages gaped, unharmed within shimmering half-globe. Qyburn sneered and fired. The thorn's bolt streaked, but Jon had angled the shield purposely. Mirror shards along its shaft caught Frost halo, refracting, breaking trajectory into dozens of silvery needles that ricocheted off ice dome, embedding harmlessly in stage planks. Poison fizzled, neutralized by sub-zero surface. A gasp rippled through onlookers on walls. Cersei's face twisted. She seized a guard's bow, notched flame-tipped arrow, and aimed at the frozen stage. Jon saw intent. Melt dome, burn captives. In the heartbeat she drew, Bran's raven shrieked overhead, veering downward. Time seemed to slow. Jon glimpsed through future threads, Cersei's arrow igniting a reservoir of oil hidden beneath stage. Explosion engulfing 100 souls. He would not allow it. He urged Viserion into a burst of speed, impossible by weight alone. Dragon and rider streaked like comet, descending along arrow's path. Cersei released. Jon swung his arm. Longclaw met arrow mid-air, shattering flaming head to sparks. He soared past parapet so close, he glimpsed terror flash in Queen's green eyes. In his wake, the sparks landed on wet mortar, sputtering out. Below, unsullied stormed open gates. Rahagel's fire had melted iron portcullis servos. Dornish spears flowed in, Dothraki riders leaping walls where scorpions stood silent. City guard threw down arms. Small folk filled streets, cheering, some sobbing. Hostages remained encased in protective frost. Davos men hammered chains free, leading them out, touching icy shell in wonder. Cersei retreated toward throne room. Jaime, arrived from silent self-imposed exile, stepped from shadowed corridor to bar her way. No words passed. He blocked her path, golden hand on sword hilt. Qyburn raised objection, but mountain loomed behind, uncertain. The queen's eyes burned with betrayal. Beneath her, castle trembled. A roar outside as Drogon landed in courtyard. Daenerys dismounting. Lannister soldiers knelt before her rather than face dragon flame. Golden Company officers flung banners in mud. Jon alighted, storming through shattered archways. Viserion behind, leaving trail of sparkling frost that hissed on marble. He reached throne room to find Cersei cornered. Back to Iron Throne, Jaime standing between. Daenerys entered opposite, flanked by Grey Worm and Tyrion. Tension so thick air crackled. Cersei's voice hissed. So the wolf and dragon claim victory with parlor tricks of snow. Burn me then, as your father would have. Jon lowered Longclaw. No more burning, he said. No children sing in wildfire tonight. Daenerys stepped forward. Yield and face judgment, or fight and lose. Cersei's laugh was raw. Judgment? By whose hand? Yours? I am queen. Tyrion's eyes glistened. Not anymore, he whispered. He produced parchment. Letter signed by Lords, Tyrell, Martell, Manderly, Glover, Stark. The realm rejects you. Cersei looked to Jaime. Brother. Lover. Strike them. Jaime's shoulders sagged. It ends, he said. She reached for hidden dagger. Arya's hand shot from doorway, twisting Cersei's wrist. Needlepoint kissed Queen's throat. No children, Arya breathed, recalling her vow to herself long ago. But queens bleed too. Cersei paled, slackening. Guards bound her. Daenerys turned to Iron Throne, forged of swords. Grim symbol. Jon watched uncertainty flicker in her features. She lifted a hand but did not touch. Instead, she faced gathered witnesses. This throne was built by conquest and preserved by fear. Today, we break fear. She looked to Jon. He nodded. Together they walked to balcony overlooking the city. Thousands filled plazas below. Jon spoke, voice amplified by Bran's gorging of ravens perched along walls, repeating an echo. People of King's Landing, the dead are gone. You are free of winter's shadow and of tyranny's hand. He paused. From this day forth, the realm will be guided not by iron points, but by a council chosen from each land. A conclave of lords and free folk both. Gasps and cheers intermingled. Daenerys added, dragons will guard, not rule. The breath that once burned will now feed fields, water rivers, and forge peace. Above them Viserion arched, exhaling gentle snow that drifted, catching sunlight into prisms. The crowd fell silent in awe, believing miracle. In the throne room, Arya freed Cersei to walk, under guard, to dungeons where she awaited the council's trial. Jaime accompanied, chains rattling on his own wrists. His choice. He would answer too. That night, fires lit streets in celebration, but no buildings burned, save pyres of scorpions dragged from ramparts. Children danced around shards of crushed mirrors, now ground to mosaic tiles, for future temples. At the Red Keep, Jon and Daenerys stood on a terrace as warm sea breezes, mixed with memory of northern wind, still clinging to Jon's hair. Viserion dozed below, belly rising steadily. Frost flowers blooming with each snore, then melting. Jon's ribs ached with exhaustion, but inside he felt something shift. Where the cold flame had loomed, now a gentler glow pooled. Steady, neither searing nor freezing. He looked at the queen beside him. It's not over, he said quietly. The world still holds chaos. But maybe we can shape it instead of being shaped. She leaned head on his shoulder, the silver of her hair brushing the black wolf pelt he wore. Forge, not shatter, she whispered. They watched the city sparkling under moon, each light a promise and a challenge. Far off, across seas, tremors rattled the ruins of Valyria. Deep in their molten hearts, eggs older than kingdoms stirred. Beyond the shattered ice of the far north, winds carried echoes of power undone and remade. But for this single night, under a sky uncluttered by storm or ash, two rulers breathed a shared breath. Ice and fire mingled in quiet accord, while a dragon of frost and gold dreamed of weaving new rivers across a scarred and hopeful world.